Good evening. This is the Budget and Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, April 13th, and it is now 7:03. Joining me are our Vice Chair, Giovanni Rodriguez, Counselor at Large, Ana Levy, Counselor from District C, Gregory De Rosario, and myself, Pavel Payano at Large, as the Chair. If you can all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Before we begin our meeting, I'll read the following. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and via remote participation. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may either attend in person at the, here at the City Council chambers, or can go on to our Facebook or YouTube page. Councilors, there are minutes here for council approval. Can I get a motion?
So move. Second.
So there is a Councilor Rodriguez, that's a motion to approve the minutes. And it's been seconded by Councilor De Rosario. We will now move for a roll call vote. I read that. Councilor Levy. Councilor Levy, you cannot hear me? Yep, we can hear you. Councilor Levy, I can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So we moved for a roll call vote. Councilor Levy.
Present.
It's a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor De Rosario.
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
And the chair votes in affirmative. We will now move to... I'm not sure. Councilor Levy, can you hear me? Councilor Levy, can you hear me? Councilor Levy, you're on mute. Can you hear me?
A ver, something is happening. I cannot hear you.
Okay. I am going to take off the... Hold on. This is going to be an echo. Yeah, no, it is. All right, so we are now moving on to new business. Item 7622, review and approval of annual application to HUD for a CDBG home grant of $875,762, ESG grant of $146,568, and with us is the manager of financial and administrator and admin services, Susan Fink. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, councilors. Susan Fink, Community Development Department. I reside at 6 Rockwood Lane in Lawrence. So our fiscal 2023, which starts on July 1st, is funded with federal fiscal year 2022 CDBG home and ESG grants. Since we have not received our actual allocation yet, we have been basing our budget on level funding the same amounts as we received for the current fiscal year, which is $1,710,748 for a CDBG, $875,762 for a home, with an estimated $15,000 in program income coming in, and $146,568 for ESG. Until we receive our actual allocation, we cannot submit our action plan to HUD for approval because the documents require the actual figures, and there are forms that the mayor needs to sign that also have the actual amount of funding on them. We'll continue to prepare our document for submission, but we'll make appropriate adjustments where required when the actual allocation is issued. Adjustments will obviously be made to the administrative line items, which for each grant are a percentage. So my request this evening is to approve the budget plus or minus 10% so that we will not need an additional vote. So the CDBG budget, which you have received, has $625,000 for park improvements, part of which is for the match for the $400,000 park grant, which will be used at Reservoir Park. $90,000 for required match for our lead abatement grant, $180,713 for homeowner rehabilitation, $10,000 as a match to Emmaus to house formerly homeless individuals from Lawrence, $252,886 for the payment to HUD on the Gateway Section 108 loan, and $342,149 for administrative costs. An RFP process was conducted for public service and public facilities projects. Applications were made available on December 1st and were due on January 21st. We received 14 application requests totaling $306,650. We had $210,000 available for funding these requests because there is a statutory 15% cap on public service activities. We did not receive any requests for public facilities programs. The Community Development Advisory Board, or the CDAB, is made up of residents that review the applications and make funding recommendations to the mayor. The members of the CDAB for this year are Mercedes Hernandez Rondon, Jeanette Jimenez, Gigi Martinez, Marta Rentas, Jennifer Suriel, and Wilman Urena. And I want to publicly thank them for the time they dedicated to this process. CDBG applicants did a 3-minute presentation to the CDAB on February 7th, and the CDAB met on February 16th to decide on their recommendations. The recommendations were delivered to the mayor on February 25th. On March 11th, Marisol Colon from our office and I met with Mayor DePena, and he made his final decision, which is what is before you this evening. He made no changes to what the CDAB recommended. A total of 14 public service activities, including ESOL classes and youth employment projects, were funded for the $210,000. The home budget which you have received has $121,822 for homeowner rehabilitation, $200,000 for first-time homebuyer down payment assistance, $131,364 for certified community housing development organizations, or CHODOs, and $350,000 for housing development projects, and $87,576 for administrative costs. The Emergency Solutions Grant budget, which you have received, allocates $135,575 for the various ESG-eligible activities, including rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, and street outreach, and $10,993 for administrative costs. So this evening, I'm asking you that you approve the action plan budget, subject to final funding amounts, plus or minus 10%, authorize the expenditure of these grant funds, and send this item to the full council to order a public hearing to be held on May 3rd. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Director Fink. Before I open for questions, could you, talk to us a little bit more about like what you thought were the differences between this year and last year? Like, what were the gains? Were there any obstacles? Like, anything like that that you can share with us?
Through the department or through the application process?
So I would think like through the application process.
So the only obstacle that I saw this year was that we had 3 applications that we had to put aside because they didn't follow the instructions and submit all the required documentation. So those applications were not even reviewed by the Community Development Advisory Board. So there's a very detailed list of all the documentation that needed to be submitted with all of these applications. We have a workshop to train people on what they need to submit, and unfortunately, these 3 applications fell short on that. We only had 1 new applicant this year, and they did get funded. It is the, I want to say the name correctly. It's the Integrated Center for Group Medical Visits. We actually did a project with them with some funding that we received through the MOVA grant. So they provided therapeutic yoga classes for residents in South Lawrence that suffered from the gas explosion trauma. And they would like to continue on those classes, so they applied for CDBG funding this year.
Great. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the process was for organizations to learn about the grant? You already mentioned that, it seems like there was like a workshop. So, when do organizations, like, when do we put out that the CDBG process has started? How many workshops do we do? Like, what's our outreach to these nonprofits or individuals in the area?
Okay, so generally, the application is available at the beginning of December, either late November, early December, depending on how the calendar falls each year. We do an initial meeting where we talk a little bit about what we did in the previous fiscal year with the funds, just to give the public a better idea of what these funds are used for. And at that time, the application is made available. It's made available online on the city website. We do advertising in the local newspapers, both Spanish and English newspapers. We have an application workshop for people who aren't familiar with the process, and we actually go through the application line by line and talk about what they should write in each of those sections. And we also have 1 week of what we call office hours, where any applicant can ask to have an appointment with Marisol Colon. She's our project officer who handles all of these applications. And she'll sit down and review their application and make sure that they've got everything that they need in the application. And I think that that's really a good opportunity for people to get some one-on-one technical assistance.
Thank you. Trying to recall the organizations that we might have approved monies to last year. This year, as far as the number of organizations, is it steady? Is it less? Is it more?
I believe in the current fiscal year, there were 20 organizations, or 20 applications that were funded. Some organizations had multiple projects. So it's a little bit less for the upcoming year than in the current year.
Okay. Opening it up, questions, counselors? Councilor Rosario?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Once you allocate the money to this organization, who actually go and supervise that what they say they were going to do is being done? Do we have anybody in particular, or you guys have anybody in particular that go and make sure that everything that they say they were going to do is being done?
So once these organizations, once you approve this budget, the organizations will get a letter from the mayor congratulating them on receiving this funding, and then they are required to come a mandatory, what we call a subrecipient training. So we go over the rules, the regulations, what their expectations are, what documentation they need to have in their files, what they have to submit for their reimbursement, because our grants are on a reimbursable basis, so the organization has to spend their own money first, and then we reimburse them for eligible expenses based on the budget in their contract. Our project officer, Marisol Colon, does a site visit to every organization while they are operating their program. So she gets to see firsthand what they're actually doing. And then when an organization submits their first reimbursement request, we do what's called a monitoring visit. So Marisol will go out and either Kate King, who is the finance officer in our department, or myself will go out, we'll review their finances, we'll review all of the required documentation that they have to have on hand. They have to have all sorts of policies and procedures in place, and if they receive a favorable monitoring visit, then they can get their first reimbursement.
But my question was, once the program is running, do anybody goes and see the program is running? And then I'm going to give you for example. A few years ago, my oldest son wanted to be involved in soccer, and we put him in Beyond Soccer. And we went Saturday to Saturday, and it was like 3 or 4 Saturdays that they not did anything with the kids. A few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, and they did not do anything with the kids. So that's what my question is. I mean, are we making sure that they actually getting the money and doing the work?
So we do one site visit at least. I can't imagine that we have, I don't believe we've funded that organization that you were referring to with Community Development Block Grant Funds, so I can't speak to that. But we do site visits, yes.
Thank you. No more question.
Thank you, Councilor Rosario. Councilors, anybody else questions?
Sure.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. It's always excited to discuss these funds. I mean, those are things that the community get involved. We actually fund a bunch of programs that are essential to the community. It is important to recognize that only 15% of those funds goes to those programs that we love, and we would like them to be funded. Actually, we're looking forward for more organizations to get involved into this type of projects. But there is other 85% of the funds that it's administrated by the community development, and we have no details until when we have to approve this budget. So actually, get it up there for.
So in a perfect world, we would have received our allocation at this point and know the numbers. And because the fiscal year starts on July 1st, you have to submit 45 days prior to that. So in an ideal world, we would submit this on May 15th. I don't know that we'll have our allocation in time for that.
So we have perhaps $625,000 for parking infrastructure improvement. We have $90,000 for lead abatement program, and that's a match. We also, that get my attention, we have homeless housing assistance match for only $10,000. And then we have CDBG's home rehabilitation of $180,000. We usually get, as of, perhaps on the CDBG's home rehabilitation, we see on the report, like how many houses we're gonna rehabilitate. We usually advocate district councilor, do you think that you can get houses around my district, and so far so on, but we haven't seen that yet. So do you mind sharing with us those allocations as of how you guys gonna use it and how you guys get to that number? Like, I'm assuming that, for the parking infrastructure improvement, you have these many parks that you're gonna be fixing. I would like to know those details of the 80% of the funds allocation of the
Sure.
budget.
So I'll start with the easiest ones first. The Section 108 loan payments, that is a prescribed loan payment every year that HUD bills us for, so we know in advance what that amount is going to be. The homeless housing assistance match is an allocation that has been requested from Emmaus in Haverhill. So they run a program that's funded through the Department of Housing and Community Development to house 14 homeless individuals in Lawrence. And that was all they asked for, was a $10,000 match towards that grant. So that's where that number came from. The park and infrastructure improvements, generally our park projects have been running anywhere from $900 to $1.5 million. And if we only get a $400,000 park grant, we need to make up the difference with community development block grant. So I've been doing park projects since probably 2006, so this is sort of my experience and best guess as to what we need for park improvements for the upcoming year. The lead abatement grant match is a 5-year grant we have, so we have allocated a certain number of CDBG dollars each year over the 5 years to meet that required commitment. And the homeowner rehabilitation sort of ends up being the, whatever is left out of the other pots of money. That's how much we put into the homeowner rehabilitation program.
Do you mind sending us like the details of project that we're gonna be doing? An estimate amount of houses that we're gonna be doing the lead abatement with this $90,000. And so far, details about the project.
Sure. I'd be happy to get that to you.
Yep, and it's as well as the home projects. Basically, we have the same thing on that. So if you don't mind sending that out.
I don't mind at all. I can give you a little bit more specifics on at least the Chodo set-aside and the housing development projects. because those are, we have already made soft commitments to the Island Parkside Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is on Island Street. You can see Phase 1 underway right now.
On that one?
The $350,000 of housing development and the CHOTA set aside of $131,364. The majority of that is set aside for, or softly committed to, the Island Parkside project, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is,
So that's basically going to Lawrence Community Work?
part of it is going to Lawrence Community Works. We also have an allocation that's going to the Stone Mill project.
So essentially for that project?
For those two projects, yes.
We already allocate $1.3 million for that project on the parking rehabilitation and access to the park that we currently don't have access, but that's basically an allocation that we did last year for that specific project. So we're going to be sending now.
Counselor,
Another-
just a pause. So the project that you're speaking about, because we're talking about two different projects, the project you're speaking about right now, that you're saying that we allocated funds to for the parking situation, Island Street, is that correct? Yeah, no, so she's speaking about that there's the Island Street project, and there's also a project at the Stone Mill.
So Island Parkside is the housing development project in 2 phases, and then there's the Stone Mill, which is right behind the Everett Mill.
The same thing.
Oh, it's the same thing?
The access to the park is access to the park that we have behind the project. That was the $1.3 million that we allocated last year.
Stone Mill is in a...
No, Stone Mill is
Stone
behind
Mill
the
is
Everett
separate.
Mill.
It's by the Everett Mill.
Yep.
So it's two different projects, Counselor.
No, part of that 350 is for the Stone Mill as well.
Okay, and can you give
I'll
us
give
more
you the,
details
I
on
can
that?
get you the specifics,
Yeah.
yes.
And the 131 is for?
That is specifically going to Lawrence Community Works. That has to go to a certified community development housing organization, community housing development organization, excuse me. And that is a prescribed set of regulations that HUD has. They have to be an organization that focuses in one particular area in the community. They have to have a certain percentage of neighborhood residents on their board, and there's certain benchmarks that they have to meet to be eligible to apply for those funds. And LCW is one of our certified CHOTOs.
Do we have any other organization that have the
That are
same
certified.
qualifications?
Bread and Roses Housing is a
Bread and
certified CHOTO, ACT Lawrence, and Greater Lawrence Community Action Council are all certified CHOTOs.
Gotcha. It's Esperanza as well? I mean, not
No.
Esperanza, it's the other one. All right, no problem. I remember later. So walk me through the 20% cap for administration on the community development departments for the total amount of the 85% of the funds. That 20%, that's to help out to pay for salaries?
Pays for salaries, it pays for a part of the lease of our office at 12 Methuen Street, it pays for office supplies, it pays for the 9% payment to the retirement board that matches the city's contribution, it pays for our health insurance,
So essentially,
training, anything.
salaries and
Yes, correct.
basically administrating the whole
Program, yes.
the whole program.
Mhm.
And I also have seen that can you explain a little bit about the 15% public service cap?
That's a statutory requirement from HUD. We can't go beyond the 15%.
You cannot go beyond
No.
15%, okay. So, and that's basically what we are allocating on the 10 different organizations that we have in front of us.
Yes,
Okay. You can allocate less, but not more.
that is correct. You can allocate less, but not more.
Okay. All right, yes, I'm wondering about those information, those details, that's gonna help out a lot.
Sure, I'll pull that together in the next day or two and get that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez. Director Fink, can you talk to us a little bit about the Emergency Solutions Grant in particular. So it's, it mentions eligible projects, but there's not that many details on that. If you can just
Sure.
give us some info on
And
that.
thanks for the promotion, but I'm not a director.
Oh, apologies.
Just a manager. So under ESG, there are basically 4 eligible activities besides administrative costs. Rapid rehousing is to get someone who is homeless quickly out of shelter or off the streets into housing. Homelessness prevention is to stabilize those people who are at risk of becoming homeless. So someone who's having trouble paying their rent and they're potentially going to be evicted, homeless prevention can be used for that. Street outreach is for our staff to go out and talk to the folks that you see maybe on the rail trail, in some of the alleys, people that you see out on the street that are homeless, and try to connect them with services, try to get them to come in and potentially get into housing as well. The other eligible activity is for the Homelessness Management Information System, which is basically a data system to track the clients that are served. But because the city belongs to the balance of state continuum of care, the state pays that cost. So we don't have to provide any funding for that service.
And Ms. Fink, so all this is run in-house?
It is, yes. Through our department, yes.
Councilors, are there any other questions? Councilor Levy, you might be on mute. But go ahead, Councilor Levy.
Okay, so the match for the homeless housing assistance, from where is coming?
Councilor Levy, can you repeat that? We didn't quite hear you.
The match for the homeless housing assistance,
10,000.
from where is coming?
So that's Community Development Block Grant, and it's going to be allocated to Emmaus out of Haverhill.
Ms. Fink, I think what Councilor Levy's asking is, do we know, so we're giving 10,000, do we know who's matching the other 10,000?
Oh, they have way more than $10,000 in funding. Yeah, ours is a minuscule amount of funds for this program. I mean, I can get the specific numbers from them if you'd like.
Councilor Levy, did you hear the answer?
No, I didn't hear.
So it sounds as a huge budget, so it's not really like specific 10,000 that is matched. They have a tremendous budget, and we're basically matching 10,000 of.
Maybe 250,000. I'm just taking a guess, but I will get the specific number to you.
Okay.
Can I answer your question, Councilor Levy?
Yes, thank you. So also on the public services, who decided for all of these programs?
Who decided on the funding? So the Community Development Advisory Board makes recommendations to the mayor, and the mayor has the final decision. He did not make any changes from their recommendation this year.
Practically all of these are the ones that always receive funds. I don't see any cultural programs from the city, so that we have a lot that is not getting any funding here.
Cultural programs are very difficult to fund with community development block grants because you have to document that the participants are residents of Lawrence and that they're low income. At a cultural event, I think it would be very difficult to try to get those forms filled out by attendees. And a lot of our cultural events bring in people from other communities as well.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat what you said?
Sure. So essentially, I would think what Ms. Fink is saying is that the different cultural programs that are out there, cultural activities that are out there, they're hard to fund because there are certain guidelines, federal guidelines, that have to be abided by, and most of these cultural organizations are not just open to Lawrence people, but they're open to everyone in general. Whereas these particular activities, I can't recall if there were certain interests that usually the mayor says, like, oh, this year we're funding ESL or citizenship, classes and youth activities or youth jobs. It sounds like those are easier to ensure that the people that are being served are low income and from Lawrence. Ms. Frank, did I?
Very good synopsis. Any participant in a CDBG-funded public service activity has to fill out a self-declaration stating that they are low income, and I think that that would be a challenge at a cultural event to get participants to fill those out.
Councilor Levy?
So how many members compose the group that is choosing the different program that we serve?
Ms. Fink, could you
Repeat the
repeat the individuals that are part of the
Community
CDBG
Development
committee?
Advisory? Sure.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if she repeats the names.
Sure. This year it was Mercedes Hernandez Rondon, Jeanette Jimenez, Gigi Martinez, Mata Rentas, Jennifer Suriel, and Wilman Urena.
Councilor Levy?
7 people?
1, 2,
1, 2, 3. 6, correct.
Councilor Levy, 6 people.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ms. Fink, so the only thing that I want to make sure that we bring back to Marisol is that I'd like to see us, like the city, do, perhaps some extra reach to organizations that aren't as developed as the ones that we're seeing in front of us. I mean, there are some names that, hold on. Actually, no. So, I mean, besides the Integrated Center for Group Medical Visits, that's definitely a group that I've never heard of. But all the other ones that are getting, big chunks between 30 to 45,000 are organizations that, not to say that they shouldn't be getting it, but they're organizations that are very, very developed. And one of the things that we see out in the community is that we see smaller organizations that perhaps they only have like one full-time employee and don't have the capacity to just be on track with different grant processes in general, never mind ours, that require a little bit more, almost like a little bit more handling. So I know that in years past, at least like a year or two ago, there was a certain movement from. Yep, mic is pushed on. There was a certain movement from the city to try to get those individuals to apply. And last year, I feel like we, at least from my recollection, I saw that. Like I saw like Sueños Basketball, I think the volleyball group, Merrimack Volley, I think that they were included as well. So that's one of the things that stood out in this one that I didn't see, not necessarily that I needed to see them, but I didn't see organizations like that there. The organizations that I see they're all organizations that I love, but I also know that they're, if instead of them receiving, like I look at Groundworks, they're getting 30,000. If this year they got 15,000, like that's not going to hurt their bottom line because their organizations are pretty big. So I would love it if we can take it back. I mean, it's too late for this year, but if for next year, if we can just keep in mind that that should be part of our outreach efforts.
Just to talk a little bit about that, I think that the biggest hurdle for a smaller organization is that CDBG is a reimbursable grant. So they have to have the cash on hand to spend first for whatever program that they're applying for, and then we reimburse them. We have had organizations in the past that got funded and weren't quite flush with cash to be able to do that and ended up turning back their grants to us. So that is probably one of the biggest hurdles, is to have enough cash flow to be able to front the money and then get reimbursed. So a small organization, that might be a little more challenging, but we'll certainly do some extra outreach next year.
Thank you for giving, because that's something I did not know. So So it could be, so my thoughts on it is, even if we're able to talk to, so for example, if we were talking to an organization in January and they weren't able to apply this year, at least now they have a full several months to basically plan for it. So it might be that, planning for trying to get $20,000, going out to donors being like, hey, if we get 20,000, good chance that the city will reimburse us that fund. I definitely think organizations that are small, if they're finding out about it in November, December, and they got to submit in January, probably not enough time for them to do something that's like new. So I can completely understand that. Thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Councilor De Rosario?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Something that pop up, at the ESG grant, right?
Yes.
Don't we have in the city a dedicated person to do that work, outside and inside? That sounds like the homeless coordinator kind of job, isn't
That
it?
is correct, yes.
Is the homeless coordinator part of this program? I
Yes.
wasn't aware.
Yeah, that's her program, yes.
Okay, thank you. I was confused. I thought it was part of this organization, but that's fine.
No, that's the funds that she allocates to appropriate
Thank you very much. And
individuals.
to add to what my colleague, the chairman, Mr. Pagano, was saying, it's also we need to have a little more patience with those little institutions, because if they don't have the paperwork, I hear them all the time. If I'm missing a signature, they turn my paper away, and then at the end of the day, I lost my turn. Somebody else come in, and I run out of time. Can we have a little bit more patience and trying to walk them through? I mean, it's a small organization. Like my colleague Pagano, chairman, was saying, this big organization have people dedicated just for that. I call it grant hunters. So they are dedicated for that. They have all the paperwork already ready for when that time comes, they just submit it to you. So can we have a little more patience for the little institution? They might have that money to spend, but they don't have the knowledge to fill out the application, or maybe the time, and when they come and turn the paper and they're missing one paperwork, just because that, we don't want you or we don't want to help you. And I think we should be a little bit more patient with those institutions.
And
Thank you very much.
I won't name the organization, but one organization that we rejected their application, 2 applications for, is a fairly large organization who has applied multiple times. So it's not just a small organization that makes mistakes. Sometimes the big ones do too.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, just to follow up on what Councilor Rosario was talking about, it's not necessarily that that they don't perhaps know the process. A small organization get discouraged over time because of apply for this grant probably 2-3 years ago, didn't get it, and the process was, they feel like the process was unfair and this and that, and they never apply right after. So that's basically one of the problems we have with small organizations, that for a lot of people, a lot of organizations up there, they just say, I'm not part of the group that are the favorites, and I'm not going to apply anymore. So those type of things are that what happened, and I hope that it doesn't happen anymore. But for us to ensure that that's not going to happen, we need to somehow probably put aside some of the same CDBG's funds to educate and to get outreach those organizations that probably are serving a lot of kids. I know one organization that they doing a lot of free programs, expanding the same program that kids already pay for, but they offering it for free, because they actually paying for those kids to go to those programs, volleyball, baseball, and many other 2 other sports that organization pick up the bill. And the organization have never applied for any of those stuff. Most of our funds come from the person running the organization from his own salary. And that's something that we should take into consideration, because there's a lot of organizations up there that probably don't know about the grant, others that get discouraged over time because they never get, funded, and others that essentially wanted to help, but they don't know how to approach the city, or it is a difficult process perhaps, or whatever. Language barrier could be. And yes, that's part of the problem as well. So what are we going to do next year to not ask the same question? It's already too late. Like Councilor Payano was saying, it's already late to change it, but I mean, what are we doing next year to ensure that we have more organizations? We don't want to have less. We don't want to have less programs or the same. We want to have more new ones.
Well, I will certainly talk with the team back at the office and figure out how we can do better outreach, and perhaps we could do something over the summer, what is CDBG, how can you apply, something along those lines. But we also need to keep in mind, I have one person who has to be the project manager for all these contracts. So managing a $2,000 contract is pretty much the same amount of paperwork and all that as it is for a $20,000 contract. So the number of contracts has to be balanced off with the time that one person can spend over the year.
Thank you, Ms. Fink. So, my opinion is, like, I'm not necessarily looking that we have 100 organizations. Right? I want to make sure that whatever organizations that we're funding, that they're going to be impactful. I just want to make sure that we're opening the doors for some smaller organizations to get in. And it could be that these small organizations need a little bit more training, and in which case starting the outreach a little bit earlier would work. I think, one of the things that I've found, having helped organizations get funds from different foundations, is that sometimes I have to hold their hands. So I think the city needs to do something similar, but at the same time, I think all of us as leaders, we have to have real conversations with these nonprofit leaders, because, as much as we're asking for hands to be held, they themselves also have to, push and ask for these things. Now, one of the things, councilors, that I will ask of you, so one of the conversations that I've been having with the mayor for the last several months is talking about the importance of doing some type of educational program with these smaller nonprofits, that they all share the same type of issues. Like, they don't know how to really access funds, the development funds, both from the city and outside of it. They might have issues with HR. They might have issues structuring their organization. And they all have different commonalities, and they all do amazing work for the city. And I think that we should try to find a way to provide some type of programming around that to sort of help them grow their impact in the community. So I'll leave that there. Councilors, is there anything, any motions as far as this item? Councilor Levy?
Yes, I think so that we should also do, I'm sorry, I just remember when we started with this CDBG program, many years ago. So we usually start calling the community, and we have some kind of forum, practically maybe 6 weeks before or 8 weeks before, we start calling the community who were interested in participating on the CDBG program. That was the way that we started this program many years ago. So we make it practically a round table with more than 30 people who were participating in different activities, a different program, a cultural program, and we teach them how to apply, how to receive the money, what they can do it. So I think that we should start doing some kind of outreach, No, a week before that we're going to put outside the RFP, but at least 6 or 8 weeks before, we should start putting in the newspaper and the radio. The
So-
CDBG program is going to be open for everyone that would like to apply, and which maybe somebody, call for a couple of weeks and teach the people how to do it and how to fill out the forms.
So
I don't know
Coun-
when is going to be the CDBG program open this year or the next year.
So Council Levy, what I would say is like, that's done. And what Ms. Fink mentioned is that at some point in November, December, so essentially between, is it like what, 6, 8 weeks before the deadline? So at some point, 6 or 8 weeks before the deadline, everything that you mentioned gets done. I think the issue is that, and I'm staring at you through my laptop, and I'm a little weirded out because you're also on the screen. I'm trying to, where do I look? So I think the issue is that for these, there are some organizations that need like a little bit more. There are some organizations that probably got the invite, right? They probably got the invite to go to the workshop and didn't show. And the reason they didn't show is probably because they had like some activity going on, and they were like, that this is a lot of work, right? But I think what sometimes these organizations, what they need is a call or a text like, hey, remember, it's today or it's next week, or that sort of like personal touch, I think will work better for these organizations because, that there are issues with just getting an email might not get them on board. But I think what we're hearing is that the department is going to be thinking through ways to increase to shift their outreach to have a stronger impact. Councilor Levy, go ahead.
We should do more advertisement. I haven't seen, last year I didn't see anything around, So when this thing was open, so we should do more advertisement. So like in September, we should start doing advertisement in the newspaper, on the radio, and everywhere. Okay, CDBG is going to be open, and you need to come to those meetings, to this round table, whatever that we're going to call, and get more people to participate, not the same people who's getting money. And also there are so many agencies that get money from somebody else, that should be giving more opportunity to the little one that's maybe are in need.
Thank you, Councilor Levy. Councilors, is there a motion for this item?
To approve and send it to the full council.
Councilor Levy, you made a motion to send this to the full council with what recommendation?
With full recommendation.
Councilor Levy, I couldn't hear you.
To send it to the full council with full recommendation.
Oh, with a favorable recommendation? So there's a motion to send it to the full council with favorable recommendation. Is there a second? There is no second, so that motion falls. Councilor?
I think, I would make a motion to send it to the full council without a recommendation as a committee report.
There's a motion by Councilor Rodriguez to send this to the full council as a committee report.
Second.
Item has been seconded by Councilor De Rosario. We will now move for a vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And the chair votes in affirmative. Thank you, Ms. Fink.
Thank you, councilors.
We now move to item 7722, order to expend grant funds, Lawrence Cultural Council grant of $3,000, and we have Jalissa Peru, Library Acting Assistant Director. Okay, councilors, what would you like? Is there a motion to table this item?
I would like to make Julissa, so let's table.
So there's a motion to table by Councilor Rodriguez. Councilor Rosario, you second? Councilor Rosario seconds it. We'll move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. We now move to item 108-22, SEIU Local 888 Supervisors and Administrators Union Collective Bargaining Agreement Funding Approval, and we have our Mark Ianello here to speak to us on this.
Good evening, councilors. This is a recent collective bargaining agreement, three-year agreement that we settled with the local SEIU Local 888 Supervisors and Administrators Union. That's generally some department heads and managers, supervisors at DPW, and a few other positions, approximately 30 plus positions. So what I've prepared for you is a brief synopsis of what's in the agreement, just a one-page synopsis of what the changes are from the within this collective bargaining agreement or memorandum of understanding, and then I've also attached the CAFO certifications indicating to the counselors that, in my opinion, that professional opinion, we can afford this collective bargaining agreement. And then also attached for review is the memorandum of agreement between the city and SEIU Local 888. Also in here is a request to, the city council is requested to approve the memorandum of understanding, but also there will be a financial transfer required to pay out the retroactive payments to union members. And that's delineated in the cover memo to the city councilors, highlighting the three-year agreement and the financial transfers on the second page of my memo. And I'm here to entertain any questions you may have.
Councilors, are there any questions? Councilor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city and the unions agree on this, and they all agreement with what we have in front of us. So
Yes,
it sounds
it's
like
completely
everybody,
signed. Yes,
everybody signed in the back page and the last page.
that's correct.
So since this agreement is in front of us for the money allocation, and I guess that everybody have agreed, parties from the unions and the administration, I will say that I'll vote in favorably to agreeing on the money allocation. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Can you tell us what the increase will be from approving this?
Yes.
How does this affect our budget?
Well, it's not going to impact this year's budget. We've allocated, and there's actually, on page 2, I can take you through the transfer, there's a prior year salary reserve account because we had 2 years of a retro with this contract, and that's approximately $68,265. And then there's the current year, there's also a current year salary reserve account, as indicated, and the current year portion is approximately $36,113. And then it'll be allocated to the applicable departments that have employees in this bargaining unit. So, for example, there's a few employees in the comptroller's office, the purchasing department, the assessors, and so on. And then there's also an additional $21,000 required for the water sewer. That's a separate transfer because the water sewer is a self-sustaining fund and they pay their own collective bargaining increases. So this entire contract is approximately $110,000.
Thank you. Councilors, if there are no other questions, is there, Councilor Rodriguez?
I have another question. It is important to recognize that this agreement is going to expire on July 1st, 2022.
Yes.
So this is most of the retroactive, basically?
Yeah,
that we're gonna
there's
be
1
paying?
year of current and 2 years of retroactive.
Yeah, so, but in July this year, this is going to expire.
It does expire 6/30/22. We've already started collective bargaining negotiations with six unions. So we're in current negotiations, successor negotiations, which start on July 1 of '22. We've started six unions I'm in active collective bargaining with. So we'll try and reach agreement before my goal is to get another 3-year agreement, and hopefully we can get the agreements well before the expired date.
So it is important to recognize that the administration can only recommend for a 3 years agreement.
That's
That's
correct.
why we're seeing this for 3 years and not necessarily more than that.
Right.
Just for the record, in case people are wondering up there. And I'm glad that you guys, the administration, is working towards getting the new and the most updated contract or agreement between the union and the city, because it's fair for everybody. I mean, it's a lot more production when an employee is under a contract and not necessarily working without a contract that it's providing that so much needed increasement perhaps on salary. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Great.
Councilors, is there a motion of the full council with a favorable recommendation?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now move to a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. I will take that back. Councilor Rodriguez, can you,
We can open for discussion.
we were about to do the vote. Can you just,
Withdraw my motion.
thank you. Councilor Levy, go ahead.
I'm gonna do the same question that I did, at the whole of the committee. So who is taking care of the contract? I'm seeing a lot of contract that has been expired a few years ago, and nobody is putting attention on that. Who is responsible in the city to maintain those contracts and to be on top of them when they're going to expire?
I think the question was, who's in charge of the collective bargaining to continue the collective bargaining? And I've been taking that charge. We've been in negotiations with all of the unions. It takes a while to get through all of them, or at least the last round of negotiations. But we have been meeting with all of the unions in the last 3-year term. This is one of the remaining unions one of the last remaining unions that needed a contract. And we negotiated with this union for quite a number of months.
Councilor Levy?
Council Chair, through you again. I'm not just talking about this one. I'm just talking about different contracts that has been expired in the city, and nobody is putting attention on this. Who is the person responsible for watching those contracts or taking care of those contracts or doing this? Because right now, that's not nice that these people has been paid, since 2019 on the rates that they were supported because the contract has been expired.
Well, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances with this contract, but or this particular bargaining unit. But again, I'm the one who has been leading the collective bargaining discussions with all of the unions. It's been a team of usually myself. We usually have an attorney with us on the city side, and usually one of the department heads. In this particular case, it was the DPW director, because most of it impacted the DPW director, so it was the DPW director, myself, and an attorney who engaged negotiations with Local 888. And again, we've negotiated, we've initiated collective bargaining sessions with there's approximately 13 unions in total, so we work one union at a time and try and get through all of them. As I indicated earlier, we are currently in discussions with we began discussions with 6 of those 13 unions within the last month or so. So we hope to, we're trying something to see if we can get to terms a little quicker, but it does take some time between the union and the city to agree on terms. There's a lot of back and forth between the parties, and it doesn't always happen. It takes several sessions before we come to terms. I don't have my file with me on this contract, but I'm sure it took, and we did have we couldn't come to terms ourselves, so we did have a state mediator was assigned to try and get us together. That took several months. It's a very lengthy process often, but we finally reached agreement, and that's why we're here tonight.
Councilor Levy, any follow-up questions?
No, what I'm saying, at the committee of the whole, we find out also that the ERCAT contract was expired 3 years ago. Now this is being expired also 3 years ago. So something has to take more care on the contract.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Levy. Councilors, if there's no other questions, is there a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation?
I move the motion.
Councilor Rodriguez makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilor Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy.
Yes.
Councilor Rosario.
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
And the chair votes in affirmative. Councilors, is there any item out of tabled matters that you would like to take out?
Yes, I have 2 items.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes, I would like to take item 23421 out of the table matters.
234? So there's a motion made by Councilor Rodriguez to take item 23421, tax collections and local receipts updates for fiscal year 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilor Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy.
Yes.
Councilor Rosario.
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
The chair votes in affirmative.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask Mr. Ianello.
Mr. Ianello? Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor.
On this item.
I'm not sure what your question is, but I think, are you looking for a financial update on these items? Yeah.
Essentially, when I put this item on the agenda, we send it over to you. I think that you were here that day, and you actually promised us an update report on these specifics, but we haven't received that yet. So if you don't have it ready, we can definitely wait, but I mean, let's make sure we get it.
Well, let me, I don't have, I'll get something in addition, but we do, this update is always done as part of our budget process, so we'll be filing our budget within the next, within the month, usually by May 15th. And it'll be included in the budget document. We'll have all the revenues and all the revenues for the past 2 years, the local receipts, all the revenues, local receipts included.
Yeah, I know.
And we'll have FY 2020 and FY 21 actuals, and FY 22 through, the report that we ran was through April 6th. We'll probably have it a little more current by the time it gets filed with the council, so it's a couple more.
The intention of the item back on October 5th, 2021 was because we were going to get the tax rate confirmed by November, and part of that discussion were going to be the local receipts and an update on that, but it didn't happen. So I know that we're going to get it on the budget, but it is to me it is important to see how the city is doing in the middle of the fiscal year. Since we actually set up the tax rate in November, that will give us a good idea of how we're doing in tax relation and so far so on. That's why I put this item there. If it's going to be part of the budget book, I think that having it separate and to fulfill the means of the item will help a lot. And we can have those discussion individually, just to see how well the city is doing, or how bad the city is doing on local receipts and tax collection. That's basically why I put this item there.
All right, let me see if I can get something, see if I can ask our comptroller to put together a report, and I'll see if we can have it for your next Budget and Finance Committee meeting, which I'll take a look at the calendar, see when that'll be.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Yep.
Councilors, is there anything you'd like to do with this item? Is there a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table if nobody else have questions.
Seeing as there's no questions, Council Rodriguez makes a motion to table.
Second.
It's seconded by Council De Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Council Levy.
Yes,
Council De Rosario.
Yes.
Council Rodriguez.
Yes.
The chair votes in affirmative.
Mr. Chair, I would like to take untabled item 34218 out of the table matters.
There is a motion to take out item 34218, payment cost recovery agreements review by Councilor Rodriguez. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion has been seconded by Council De Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Council Levy.
yes,
Council De Rosario.
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
And and the chair votes in affirmative.
So, Mr. Chair, this item is an extremely important item that we haven't have perhaps the insight of the program or the agreement. This is in relation to the payment cost that the city do when it comes to utility companies and when it comes to other companies doing work on our roads. There is an agreement in place that the city gets some funds, perhaps from Columbia Gas back then when they were here, or the gas company, because of they doing work on our roads. I just want to make sure that the departments, the finance department, the DPW department, the water and sewer department are working together to ensure that that agreement is in place, so we as a city can get the funds out of those that are doing work and not necessarily fixing the road as it's supposed to. And I know that the agreement was in place back then in 2017, 2015. I don't know if they put that agreement in place since, and if they did, perfect. But if it's not, it is important to have that conversation again with those departments. I know that the DPW department was leading that back then when Brian Peña was the DPW director. So, Mr. Chair, unless the Mark Ayanello have any update on this, which I doubt, I would like to send correspondence to the DPW department and the water and sewer department to ensure that they put in this agreement together, or at least they're working on it.
So, Councilor Rodriguez, so you want to send correspondence to the DPW department and the water and sewer department, what?
To ensure that they are working, or to give us an update on the payment cost recovery agreement that we have in place back then.
Okay, so there's a motion to send correspondence to the DPW department, water and sewer department, to give us an update on the payment cost recovery agreements that were done in 2018, or just agreements in general? Update on payment cost recovery agreements. And is it second?
Second.
Second by Council De Rosario. Roll call vote. Council Levy.
yes,
Council De Rosario.
Yes.
Council Rodriguez.
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. Is there a motion to table the item?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion to table by Council Rodriguez, second by Council De Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Council Levy.
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez.
Yes.
And the chair votes in affirmative. Councilors, I would like to take out item 201-20 from table matters. Can I get a motion to take that item out?
So move.
There's a motion to take item 201-20. Is second?
Second.
Second by Counselor De Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Counselor Levy?
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And the chair votes affirmative. Councilors, this was put on by Mayor Dan Rivera back in 2020. It was a very interesting home rule petition that I think had the possibilities of being a tool to ensure that vacant properties are being taken care of. I would like to send correspondence to Mayor De Peña, to the City Assessor Vega, and to Inspectional Service Director Armano, asking them to attend the next meeting or someone from their office, and to let us know what it is that they wish us to do with this item. If there's still, I'm interested in finding out if there's still an interest in moving this forward. Can I get a motion to send that correspondence?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion to send this correspondence to the mayor's office, the city assessor, inspectional service director, so they can come to our meeting and inform us on this item and let us know how we're going to proceed. We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And the chair votes affirmative.
Motion to table item 201-20.
There's a motion to table item 201-20.
Second.
It's been second. We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And the chair votes affirmative. Councilors, is there any item out of tabled matters that we believe should be, so actually, can we take item 397-19 out of tabled matters? Is there a second?
Move.
Second.
Roll call vote, Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. I would like to, can I get a motion to send correspondence to Councilor De La Cruz, asking her what she would like us to do with this item?
So move.
Second.
We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. Can I get a motion to table?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion to table. It's been set properly second. We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
And the chair votes in affirmative. Councilors, can I get a motion to take out 355-19?
Second.
There's a motion to take item 355-19 has been properly second. Move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Councilor De Rosario?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
The chair votes in affirmative. Councilor Levy, what would you like us to do with this item?
I would like you to table that item by the meantime.
So, yep, so we'll make that a motion. So, Councilor Levy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to keep the item right in there. So I know that the mayor have been requesting a salary increase for more of the employee, but I want to keep it in there after we pass the budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Just Councilor Levy, just so you're aware, this item won't get the salary increase. This item is more to discuss a salary increase. It sounds like you're aware, so I know that you'd like to make a motion to table this item. Is that true? So
Yes.
Councilor Levy makes a motion to table the item. Is there a second?
Second.
We move to a roll call vote. Councilor Levy?
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. Last item, I'd like to take out of table matters, item 197-15.
So move.
Second.
We moved, as item 197-15 has been taken, there's a motion to take it out of table matters, it's been properly second. We move to a roll call vote. Counselor Levy,
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez,
Yes.
and the chair votes in affirmative. So 197-15 is properties with outstanding taxes due to the city of Lawrence, review of payment, tax titles, and disposal process. Mr. Ianello, is it possible that we, the committee can get a report listing these properties so that we can review?
Are you looking for all properties with outstanding taxes due? That's quite a long list. Or just the ones in, are they a payment plan?
So I would say like outstanding for like the last several years. So like maybe, you know, like maybe like the last like 5 years or 4 years.
So someone who owes taxes, who hasn't paid their taxes for 5 years, or you want an outstanding list for each of those fiscal years?
So what I would be looking for is someone who hasn't paid their taxes in like several years.
Several
So
years,
maybe
okay,
that's
gotcha.
3, like, you
Yeah.
know, if 3
Okay.
is 10,000, obviously that's too big.
Yeah.
Right? So like something that we could look at, you know, perhaps it's, you know, a couple hundred or less.
I'll ask the treasurer can run a report. I'll ask the treasurer to provide a report that, say, the top 100 delinquents, something like that.
I thank you, Director Anello. Is there a motion to table?
So move.
Second.
We move to a roll call vote. Counselor Levy,
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Chair votes in affirmative. Counselors, if there's no other tabled matters, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion to adjourn. It's been properly seconded by Counselor De Rosario. We move to a roll call vote. Counselor Levy,
Yes.
Counselor De Rosario,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez,
Yes.
and the chair votes in affirmative. Have a good night, and thank you, everybody.